Hello my loves, welcome back and welcome to another monthly wrap up. I can't believe it's the end of February already, honestly. I know it's a short month, so it does go faster than other months, but it feels like it's gone very, very quickly this year for whatever reason. I don't actually have too many books to talk about today. I only have 3. It's been a very good month for reading though, even though it has been a short one. In terms of what I have been reading, I've been enjoying quite a lot. I feel like towards the end of last year, I was going into a bit of a slump in terms of volume of what I was reading, but also in terms of what I was actually enjoying and my personal feelings of the quality of what I was reading. But January, for the most part, and February seems to be upward slope in terms of enjoyment, so I'm hoping that that continues. Let's get into what I've been reading this month. The first book I've already talked about on this channel, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I nearly forgot that for a minute. I've done a whole video on the plot of this book with a few sprinklings of my own opinions throughout it. I was actually quite on the fence with what to rate this. I settled on 3.75. 3 felt really stingy, but 4 felt too generous. But it was closer towards a 4 than it was a 3, so I settled there. This is, by all accounts, a decent book. I just think I didn't enjoy it as much as I was expecting to. For a very brief rundown, in case you don't know what the book's about and you can't be bothered to go and watch my, I think, like 50-minute video on the plot, which I don't blame you. Frankenstein is a early science fiction novel. So it's from 1818, one of like the first Gothic horror science fiction novels of its time, and it focuses on this guy called Frankenstein who becomes obsessed with working out what makes something alive and how things are living rather than dead, obviously. And he discovers this, creates another human being, and then is immediately disgusted by this human being that he's created, abandons him, and then spends the whole rest of the book avoiding all responsibility for what has happened. That is the plot of Frankenstein, essentially. My thoughts on Frankenstein. On one hand, I can appreciate that it's a very important piece of fiction. I can appreciate that it is well written, especially by someone so young, because I would have not been able to write something like this when I was 18. So, you know, I can appreciate those parts of it. I also can appreciate the writing of Frankenstein, particularly as a character, because it created such strong feelings of hatred within me, and I like it when authors can make me vehemently hate someone. I think that's good writing. So the fact that I absolutely despise the main character of this book, I actually think is a good thing, because it did actually make me feel more engrossed and into the story. However, my downside to this book and why I'm sort of leaning more towards that lower rating is it was just so detail heavy a lot of the time, that in a way that I felt was quite unnecessary. There's a lot of traveling that happens in this book, which is, you know, which is fine, but the traveling is detailed like so precisely. Specifically the weather is detailed so precisely at every single moment available, like the wind, the sea, the mountains, just everything. So much unnecessary detail, which just at times makes it feel very slow and a bit boring, which for a book that's not very long, you wouldn't expect that, but it's there. It was just like, can we just get to the point, please? And I feel like you can excuse that to an extent, because it's Frankenstein himself like verbally telling the story to someone else. So when I'm reading it, I'm like, dude, hurry up, like keep me engaged. I don't care about the wind while you're at sea. I don't care. So it falls then into my hatred of Frankenstein even more. when I know really it is just the writing and it could have maybe been some of that cut out, maybe. There was just too many other things that were included randomly that didn't really serve much of a purpose. There's a letter that Frankenstein gets at one point from his cousin. There's just random gossip in it about other characters that we never hear about before or after that letter, and it's quite a long letter. There's whole bits of stories about the people who work on this boat that Frankenstein ends up on that after the first few chapters we never hear about again. So I think there was just unnecessary detail in this book which made it fall a little bit flat, and I feel like detracted from the main story a little bit. But generally not bad. Generally an okay classic, really. In terms of like readability and stuff, it was pretty good. I did have a fun time reading it, just not as fun as I was expecting. I think that's the thing. I think I was expecting to enjoy it more than I did, so I felt let down. Okay, the next book is where the spate of good books begins. So this is The Cloisters by Katie Hayes. And I had heard nothing about this book. I just saw it in Sainsbury's when I don't even know why I was in Sainsbury's, but I was, and I saw it and I read the back of it and was like, that sounds great. I'm definitely getting that. Immediately 5-star book. It was very, 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 very good, very enjoyable. Brief overview: Anne, our main character, is studying art history, I think. I think it's art history that she's studying. She goes off to New York City to do like it's not an internship, but it's something like that. Oh, she's gonna go and be an associate at the Met over the summer before hopefully then going off to uni or something else. I don't know. It is hopefully going to get her better job prospects in the art history world. But when she gets there, the person she's supposed to be, like the actual person who works there that she's supposed to be helping out, has suddenly had to go away, and she ends up working in this other little museum called the Cloisters, where she's pulled in to help research the history of tarot cards specifically, because she has experience in the occult side of art and also can speak quite a few different languages, so she's a good asset for translating all these different texts and stuff. So Anne has her own shit going on from her past that she's kind of trying to escape by coming over to New York, and everyone at the Cloisters seems to have like their own little secrets as well. The whole way through there's just this kind of like weird vibe. I don't know how else to explain it other than you can tell something's going on and Anne can tell something's going on, but you're just not sure what it was. Everyone has secrets, Anne included, and she's trying to escape those and also sort of trying to discover everyone else's secrets. And yeah, that is basically the book then, is you sort of going through her time at the museum and her researching all this stuff and sort of forming friendships and relationships with these people but not quite trusting them, and it was just really good. It was really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this book. It had that weird mysterious vibe, but it was in a museum and they're doing history and tarot. I love history and tarot, which is why when I read the back of this, I was like, that is for me, that sounds perfect. It was just the perfect combination of things for me, really. Where there's like a lot of secrets and mysteries, there is like, you know, different reveals and twists and things you find out about different characters or, you know, plot progressing, and I'm usually decent at spotting things coming. I did not spot anything coming in this book. Every single thing, like secret that these people have or whatever that was revealed shocked me, apart from one, but I think that was the one that was like foreshadowed most obviously. The rest of them I was like, what? You know those books where when you finish them and you just have to sit there in silence for a while afterwards just thinking, what did I just read? What just happened? And like trying to trying to recover from what you've just read and make sense of it. That was what happened with this book. I just had to sit there for a while afterwards and be like, what? But like in a good way. I have said this many times before. I like books that leave me with something. I don't like books that I just put down and immediately forget everything that's happened and never think about it again. The books that I'm most likely to rate 5 stars or that I really enjoy are the ones that afterwards I'm still like thinking about and trying to make sense of things and work out. And this book did that exactly. One of the very interesting things about this book as well is that none of the characters are likable. If you go on Storygraph and it like, when you're doing your review on there, it like asks you, does it have likable characters? And it's the percentage of people that said no are so high. The characters are not likable at all, but in a very like complex way of you kind of like, oh, do I like you? Do I not like you? What are your intentions here? You're just kept on your toes a lot throughout this, and despite the fact that the characters aren't particularly likable, you still get pulled in and you still really want to know what happens. It's almost like the atmosphere of the book and what is happening in the museum of Anne getting pulled into this world and wanting to find out what happens, even though half of her kind of doesn't really want to. It's the same. It's the experience that I got as a reader of being like, oh, I don't like any of you, but also like I want you to keep doing the tarot research, and also I want to find out what weird things are going on. It was just a weird little book. And when I say weird, I don't mean like the plot was weird or anything like that. You can just tell that something weird is happening, like almost like culty vibes that you get as you're reading it, but you can't quite work out what it is. I would really recommend this book. I've already recommended it to quite a few different people in my actual life. If you like dark academia, I would say this has a bit of a dark academia feel to it. If you are a little history nerd like me, it's not hugely historical, but they are doing like historical research, so it's like light history. But yeah, if you're like a bit of a history nerd, if you like the like occulty, witchy, tarot, scholar vibes, then you'll like this book. I know it's very early in the year, but I think this is probably easily going to be one of my top books of the year. It was just so good. And then finishing off on still a good note, the final book I read this month was Babel, which I know I'm really late to reading. I know that, I do. I have been meaning to read this book for a very long time. I've had it for quite a long time, and I knew I would enjoy it, but I just felt quite overwhelmed and daunted by it because it's quite a big book, quite small text, quite a lot of detail and little annotations in it, but God, this was such a good book. I appreciate, because I'm quite late to this, I'm probably not going to be saying anything new about this book, but here we go. Easily 5 stars. I can't remember how far into it, but I hadn't finished it and I knew it was going to be 5 stars. So if you, like me, are also late to the Babel party, here's a very brief overview. Our main character, Robin, is born in Canton in China, and when he's about 8, I think, his mum contracts a plague and dies. A wealthy English professor called Professor Lovell comes and basically rescues Robin. He cures him of any sickness through the use of a somewhat magically infused bar of silver, and decides to take Robin back to England so he can learn a load of languages and basically become like a translator is the goal. Robin spends most of his childhood reading, doing Latin, Greek lessons, maintaining his Mandarin and Cantonese so he can eventually go to Oxford and attend the Royal Institute of Translators part of the school, otherwise known as Babel. The book then follows him at Babel, going through his studies, trying to make friendships, and also trying to sort of balance his loyalty between England and the crown and the empire that basically took him in and raised him versus his home country of China, which is being severely exploited by the English Empire. That is a very simplified version of the plot because, like I said, there's this use of this magical silver bar. There are elements of magic in this, which is very complicated, and you understand better if you read the book rather than me attempting to explain it. So the main thing is Robin goes to this university and is trying to fit in, but then also isn't, and yeah, it's hard for him, poor boy. My thoughts on this book are hard to put into words. This always happens when it's a book I really like. If it's a book I hated, I could give you a list of 100 reasons why I hate it. When it's a book that I love, I can't do it. I love history. I also love languages, and I love dark academia. So this is ticking all of my boxes immediately. The atmosphere of the university and the whole city was amazing. I really liked the writing. The characters were rich and deep and complex, and seeing the relationships then develop or change between different characters was amazing. There was again like twists and changes or like plot points in this story that I didn't see coming, and I was like, what? There was some then though that I like had worked out. It was a really nice balance, I think, between me being like shocked and me being like excited because I was right about something that I'd thought about. The writing in that regard was really good as well. I think it was a very interesting way to comment on and look at the absolute devastation that the English Empire brought on so many different countries through the use of that slightly fantastical, magical element to make it, you know, that fiction, that different approach, but still like everything that was happening and all the comments on it from the various characters were in, you know, you could have said them about that period in time regardless of that fantastical element being there or not. It just added to it a little bit more. I think it was very clever. It was very emotional, a bit dark, funny at times. The thing that hooked me, that I did find very funny, was this is like, right, I think this is in like the first chapter. It's not a spoiler anyway. This is when Robin's still quite young and he's like learning about England, and he makes some comment about England and the United Kingdom in general being like split and divided and ravaged by war because of the divide of Catholicism and Protestantism. His comment is like that he couldn't really understand why, because he didn't see that they were that different. As someone from those places who was brought up mainly on the Catholic side of things, it just really made me laugh. It was so funny. There's these little comments throughout the book that are kind of like sarcastic, kind of like witty little comments that I just found really funny, for especially like a book that's, you know, there's quite a serious topic here and it is a very emotional book. I cried a lot reading this book. Those little funny comments were just a nice like break or welcome addition to that darker side of it. All in all, it was really good. I appreciate it can be quite an overwhelming book because there's like annotations and like what are they called, like footnotes on it. I personally loved that, but I think that is because I am a little history nerd who does actually quite enjoy reading just history textbooks from time to time. So personally that was right up my street, but I think if that does feel overwhelming, the story is really worth it. So if you can like push through that and like, you know, just engage in the story, then it is really worth it. It's a really good book. I would recommend this to everyone. In all seriousness though, again, quite similar to the Cloisters, if you like dark academia, if you like history, I suppose for this one, if you like language, you're probably going to enjoy this book. If you want something that's sort of sad and emotional, but also like adventurous and mysterious, you're probably gonna like this. If you want a magical infused commentary on how bad the British Empire was, you'll also probably like this. It was a really, really good book. It's going on the favourites bookshelf immediately, definitely. That is all of the books that I read this month. I don't know what else I was gonna say.